and he advises her to do the same. Suddenly, a group of infected people enters the wagon, so Carol and the other sane passengers run to the end of the train and close the door. The infected ones press the emergency button to make the train stop before breaking down the door to start infecting the passengers, so Carol opens the back door and jumps off the wagon, escaping by running through the tunnel until she reaches the locker room of a station. There she finds a guard's gun, and when said guard approaches her, she gets too scared and shoots him by accident. Terrified, Carol drops the gun and crosses the station, keeping a poker face to pretend to be infected. When she makes it back to the street, she watches some cops catching the uninfected citizens to force them to take the vaccine, which is actually Tucker's trick to pass the virus to everyone. At that moment, an uninfected cop notices the sweat on Carol's face and tells her to go away quickly because the sweat will give her away. Carol starts walking away and bumps into her neighbor, who offers the shot to her. Luckily, Carol's acting convinces her that she's already gotten the vaccine. Afterward, Carol goes to Tucker's house, only to find it empty. She leaves a message for Oliver before going out again, and she finds a bunch of people watching a couple end things for themselves. Carol makes sure not to react and keeps going until she reaches the Belisk mansion, where Ben and Steven are still conducting some tests. After a bit of discussion, Ben decides to help Carol find her son while Steven and his assistant prepare to travel to Fort Detrick in Maryland to find a cure for the virus. They also decide to stay awake, fearing that they might have been infected if they fall asleep. At that moment, Belisk comes back and Ludmiel receives him with a hug, but Belisk is infected and worried about potential intruders, so he lets a bunch of guards get inside. Luckily, Carol and the others see this on the security cameras and escape through the back door. When they reach the streets, they notice Wendy being forcefully taken away by infected cops. She tries fighting against them, yelling that she slept yet she was still okay, but the cops knock her out anyway. After the group splits, Carol and Ben chat about Wendy's words and deduce that Wendy has somehow developed an immunity to the virus. Then the duo finds a dead cop on the ground, so they steal his car and go to Carol's office, where they begin searching through Wendy's medical profile. Ben finds out that Wendy was suffering from a brain illness called encephalitis, and that's why she's immune. The virus only tends to attack healthy brains so that it can feed and multiply its number. Ben calls Steven at the lab to give him this new information while Carol gets another text from Oliver mentioning that he's being held at his grandmother's home in Baltimore. Scared, Carol confesses to Ben that she has already been infected with the virus, but Ben promises that everything will be alright. Afterward, Ben drives like a maniac to the city, crossing blocked roads until he has no choice but to let Carol go so the police will chase him instead. Carol continues on foot, and when a cop stops her, she presents her ID with a poker face and is allowed to leave. Eventually, Carol reaches the station and boards the train to Baltimore, where she hides in the bathroom. The lack of sleep is starting to take its toll on her and she starts having visions, like seeing a second self in the mirror that wants to attack her. She wakes up just in time, and after washing away a piece of that strange flesh, she opens the door to find Gene, who explains he lost his family and now he's part of hers. He keeps asking her to sleep, and Carol pretends she'll do exactly that, but in private. Once the train reaches Baltimore, Gene checks on her again and finds her removing more flesh pieces from her body, so he stays suspicious. Tucker comes to escort Carol and Gene to his mother's place, believing Carol's emotionless act. Oliver isn't around, but Carol continues to act around the family, and when she gets a call from Ben, she talks in code pretending it's her secretary. When Tucker finally leaves for work, Carol uses the opportunity to search the house and finally finds Oliver in a room. The two of them hesitate at first, but once Carol says a couple of emotional words to confirm she's fine, they reunite with a hug. Oliver mentions that he's been sleeping every day but still hasn't transformed, and Carol realizes the medications for his sleeping disorder have made him immune. Suddenly, Gene catches them red-handed, but Carol easily pushes him away and rushes out with her son. On their way out, Tucker sees them through the window and immediately goes after them, starting a chase through the streets. Oliver finds a broken window in an abandoned warehouse and they hide there, but Tucker comes inside too. While he monologues like a bad villain, Carol tries to sneak to the door, but Tucker catches her from behind and tries to knock her out. Oliver cuts in and hits his dad with a metal tool, so Tucker captures him instead. This gives Carol the chance to hit him on the head and knock him out, allowing them to escape. Afterward, Carol and Oliver hide inside an empty department store. Carol searches the medicine section and finds an injection, which she shows to Oliver as she explains she wants him to inject her heart with it if she ever falls asleep. Then they go looking for some food and Carol gets a call from Ben, who learns about their location and promises to pick them up soon. While his mother's busy on the call, Oliver slowly approaches a door with blood splattered nearby, but luckily Carol stops him before he can open it. Instead, she goes inside herself and finds multiple people on the ground going through the transformation. The group includes a cop, so Carol very carefully comes closer to take his gun before rushing outside and locking the door, telling Oliver to stay away from it. Hours start to pass while they wait for Ben, and while Oliver sleeps, Carol desperately searches for anything she can use to stay awake, going back to the beginning of the story. Unfortunately, this isn't enough and Carol falls asleep anyway. Eventually, the infected people inside the room wake up and begin hitting the door as they try to get out. The noise wakes Oliver up and he discovers her mother has fallen asleep, so he immediately injects her with a syringe, which wakes her up and cancels the transformation just in time. Then Carol washes the weird flesh off her face and leaves the bathroom to discover Ben has finally arrived. She rushes to hug him, only to realize he's been infected too. Carol backs away as Ben invites Carol to join the new society that will have no crime, hate, or discrimination. A terrified Carol points her gun at him, but Ben still opens the door and lets out all of the other infected people before mentioning that they hate immunity as he points at Oliver. The group tries to capture the child, so Carol begins shooting quickly, killing them one by one. However, she can't bring herself to kill Ben, so she just shoots him in the leg and runs away with Oliver. Outside, they take Ben's car to escape. While Carol drives like crazy, she gets a call from Steven, who gives her an address where a helicopter will be waiting for them. When she reaches the main street, she finds herself surrounded by cars and she crashes, causing her to lose consciousness. Lots of infected people now surround the car and Oliver locks the doors before shaking Carol until she wakes up. A man manages to break a window, but before he can infect them, Carol speeds up and pushes the people away to escape. There are still a few crazy ones hanging on the roof of the car, so Carol drives like a maniac and hits things on purpose to make them fall. There are also police cars hitting hers until they make her crash, sending the last few attackers flying against a shop window. Luckily the car is fine and Carol keeps driving while getting directions from Steven through the phone. An affected man throws a Molotov bomb at her car, but Carol still drives with the vehicle on fire, not stopping until they make it to the parking lot of the right building. The car crashes against a pillar, so Carol and Oliver go out and run to the elevator, where they're almost reached by the enemy. They hit them and push them away, allowing for the doors to close. The duo finally makes it to the roof, where Steven and his army buddies rescue them in a helicopter. Sometime later, scientists outside the USA have finally created a vaccine, and thanks to it the alien virus has been eradicated from the entire world, allowing life to be normal again. As the main scientist behind the vaccine, Steven explains to the press that the vaccinated people will have no memories of the earlier events. Meanwhile, Carol has adopted Jean and she is now in a relationship with Ben. While the boys leave for school, Ben reads the newspaper and comments on the violent crimes committed by people, which leaves Carol thinking about the aliens' offer of peace. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.